Hello my friends, welcome back to another video, or if you're new here, welcome in. My name is Ian with Out of This World Reader, and today's video is a very special video because I recently wrapped up a trilogy that has risen into the ranks of my top 10 favorite fantasy series of all time. And that's really crazy because if you asked me 2 years ago, maybe even a year ago, who Joe Abercrombie was, I would have told you I have no idea. But a couple months ago, I picked up The Blade itself, which is the first book in the First Law Trilogy. And from there, I binged the whole trilogy. Now, I want to start off by saying that this series is not going to be for everyone. It is gritty, gruesome, and gory, and that continues through these 3 books within the First Law Trilogy. It begins with The Blade itself, then it goes to Before They Are Hanged, and then it concludes with probably my favorite book, close to top 3 books of all time, The Last Argument of Kings. And that gruesomeness and spilling of guts and people's heads being cleaved open continues through the 3 books. In the first book, it isn't as bad, but Joe Abercrombie kicks it up a couple notches with each book. And in that final book, it feels like every other chapter someone is getting their head split open like an egg. So I don't know why that sounded intriguing to me. Like grimdark is not a genre or subgenre that I've kind of experienced very much, but I can say that I am a fan now. Joe Abercrombie's inclusion of dark humor and just the dialogue, the characters, and everything about it is just a blast, and I can't wait to check out more in the First Law world. But I wanted to do this video because it's kind of like an overall review of the First Law Trilogy, as well as kind of why you should read, because this is a series that I had no idea kind of about before BookTube, or even when I joined BookTube. It was pretty low on my radar, and when I picked it up, I absolutely fell in love with the First Law world, the characters, and everything. So I really wanted to kind of give my opinion so that maybe some other people out there can pick these up and enjoy them just as well. To begin, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a premise of The Blade itself, because to be honest, there really isn't much of a plot going on within this first book. It is mostly character driven, and that continues through the 3 books. But at the end of this book, you do get a little glimpse of where the kind of whole series is going to go. So that can deter a lot of readers because some are not as character driven. I was a bit worried because I do enjoy a little bit of plot mixed in with the character development. But these 3 main characters in here are the centerpiece of this whole trilogy, and seeing them kind of make these decisions and adapt to these new ways of life was just something that I really enjoyed. So it kept me intrigued through this first book, to kept me turning the pages, because it really is fast-paced. I felt like I had to know what happened to these perspectives and what went on with them. And then as it continues on with it, Before They Hang, you get a little bit of traveling and them kind of forming bonds. And then in The Last Argument of Kings is kind of everything that's kind of been building up, all this steam that's kind of been collecting, and everything just exploding in this final book. And it was just absolutely outstanding. And so if you're on the fence about picking up The Blade itself, I would definitely kind of give it a try. And if you do not like where it's going by the end of the book, and I know that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, because it's a big book, and if you're not on board with it by the end of the book, then I would consider not picking up the rest of the book. But I was absolutely in love by the time I finished the first chapter. I was really intrigued, and it kept me going through the first book. So then it's time to talk about these characters, since they are the kind of the main focus within this trilogy, I believe. And we'll begin with Logan, who is probably one of my favorites out of this whole first batch of books within the First Law world. He is a badass fighter, and he is trying to be a better person. But I mean, as you realize through the 3 books, you got to be realistic about things in his past. He has a very dark past, very brutal past, as he is kind of like this warrior, and he's battling some inner demons with the Bloody Nine. And he has a fierce reputation in the north, and he kind of is on the run, And it just, the way his character development through these 3 books was like, it was a bit sad towards the end of the book, because just like his past, and it just really affected him as he was trying to be this better person. But because of the roles that he's put in, like it's very hard for him to kind of adjust, and the old habits that he's kind of had in the past, kind of, they come back, and it just, to see just the way that he ended up in the final book was a bit sad. But that ending with him was absolutely crazy, and I honestly, if you've read this series, I want to know your thoughts on kind of his final chapter. And then there is Galacta, who's another favorite of mine, and he is a cripple. He's been tortured, and he is part of the Inquisition within the Union. He goes around, tortures people, and gets confessions. And something about that, like, it doesn't sound like the best character to follow, but for some reason, the inner monologue that he kind of includes, and just the witty humor that he has, and the ability that he has to kind of fight in a different way, because he's a cripple and he's not able to kind of be a fencer anymore. He was an outstanding warrior in the past, but because he was tortured by the Gurkhas in the south, I believe, he can no longer fight. He walks around with a limp, so he has to find a lot of other ways to fight, and that it kind of incorporates political intrigue. And I really enjoyed how this balance that Joe Abercrombie had between, like, where you had Logan, who was just like this fierce warrior, and then Galacta, who was kind of having to fight in different ways. So that balance really flowed with me. So that balance really clicked with me. And as well as Logan, like, seeing his development through the 3 books was really great. And I really enjoyed his ending, as well as how it kind of paired with Jezzel's ending. I thought that was hilarious. And it was this perfect ending for the both of them, because that brings me perfectly to the next character, the next main character, Jezzel, who's a pompous little dickhead, who is like this noble who has a very idealistic opinions on just lower classes, and he feels like he's just a cocky dude. And for me, I think this was the hardest character to like, even when he kind of made changes in the later books, like, it was still hard to look, especially in the last book, as kind of, in the second book he kind of made some steps, but then like, as the old habits, similar with all the other characters, they kind of came back. And it was very hard to like, because he's just a slimy little turd at times. But still, like, I really felt bad for him for the majority of the book, because like, he just goes through it all. But the other side characters as well, they all play big roles, and they're really fleshed out by the end of the series. You have Pharaoh, who is driven by revenge. He's kind of like a fierce archer, fierce warrior, similar to Logan, and I really enjoyed her perspective as well. Then you have the named men, like dogmen, who are kind of the allies, and they were within Logan's band before the events that kind of kicked off the first book. And you see them kind of go with the Union trying to bring down Bethold in the north. So I just really enjoyed Dogmen as well as the other, like Toll, Thunderhead, and Three Trees. They're all just a blast to read, and I loved their perspectives probably the most. I think it's hard to choose between all these different characters, because I just really love spending time with them through the series. And then you have Wes as well, who is one of Jessel's friend, and he is kind of working together with the named men to kind of bring down Bethold. And he's got a lot going on, and he's also put in roles that he is kind of not used to, and society doesn't believe he should be there. So I really enjoyed all of the side characters, all of the characters as well. They all played pivotal roles in the series, and seeing how it all kind of clicked together in the end and weaved into the final book, The Last Argon Kings, I thought it was outstanding. Joe Abercrombie did an incredible job with the character work. And if you're a character-driven story or a character-driven reader, this is going to be perfect for you. But also, the world building is really outstanding as well. You begin in the capital of the Union, Evidu, and that's where the Blade itself mainly takes place. You also get some kind of side chapters with the named men as well as with Pharaoh, kind of all bringing it all together for that kind of final conclusion within the Blade itself, and kind of where it's going to lead in the next books. But with each book, it kind of expands, and you get more of this world and more of the magic, because Bayaz, who is another character, that you don't get a perspective of, but you definitely spend a lot of time with him. And he is kind of the first of the Magi, and he's a magician. And as each book progresses, you definitely get more of the magic and how it kind of plays a role into this larger plot that kind of expands at the end of the first book with like the eaters, and just it is a soft magic system, but I really enjoyed how it played a role in kind of like a background role within the series. In the second book, you get to go to like the old empire, which is full of mystery and it's completely shattered in ruins. Then you go to the north and it just continues to weave together all these different kind of places and people together into the final book. I also found that the prose was really approachable for me. I really enjoyed how it wasn't too flowery, but it wasn't too straightforward. It was just a perfect mix and really flowed with the writing. And what added into more of the character development and kind of fleshing out these characters was that Joe Abercrombie with each character kind of changed the grammar that he used. So if you're with Dogman, it's going to be a bit different than if it's following Chesil, who's kind of raised in the Union with privileges. So it all kind of added into just this greater kind of character arc and seeing how it all flowed with them as well. I really enjoyed the prose. A lot of the readers that I've talked to say that his fight scenes are some of the best they've ever read, and I totally agree with that. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it is very gruesome, but it all flows perfectly and it's very vivid in my mind. And I just loved how like I was able to perfectly visualize how this battle was occurring and how this fight was like a duel would kind of occur. And that is another thing, he's very good at writing kind of duel scenes. And there was one in the final book that was just a blast to read. It took like quite a bit to read, but with each of the perspectives it kind of switched and it just was awesome. It was crazy. It felt like a movie in my mind. I felt like the fight scenes were definitely up there with John Gwynne, who's another favorite author of mine. So I hope that this just kind of intrigued you to pick up the First Law Trilogy. I definitely recommend it if any of this sounds good to you. It's not going to be for everyone, but it was definitely for me, and I can't wait to continue on with the 3 standalones within the First Law world before I get into the Age of Madness trilogy, which is kind of takes place further in time. So I'm very curious to see how that will kind of play a role, especially with the way the last Argument of Kings ended. And I really hope that we kind of get some glimpses back at the past characters, because they're some of my favorites of all time. So if this sounds good, definitely pick it up. I feel like if you enjoyed that first book, you will definitely consume each book really quickly afterwards. But that is going to be all from me. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing. It's time for Ellie to come on here and first wish you all to have a splendid day. But she also says that adventure is out there. So I'll catch you next time. Bye.